Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we have great guest, Joe Reid. Let's welcome Joe. How are you?
Hey, hello. Glad to be here.
Okay, great to see you on our show. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Joe.
Yeah, so my name is Joe, and I'm an executive director of Broken People. It's an international mental health peer support group. And I'm an author, a new author of the book Broken Like Me, an insider's toolkit for mending broken people. But what is more important to me is I've been a husband for 24 years. I am a dad of 4 kids. I'm a passionate person of faith, and I love people. And those three things are probably the most important to me. And this whole book and leading a mental health group is something that was born out of circumstances that were not something of my design or something I wanted to do. But mental illness is something I struggled with my entire life. And within the last 3 years, I've had an opportunity to take some of the tools that I've learned to really survive to help people around the world to survive as well. So, and the organization I lead is called Broken People. Yeah, and that's me in a 20-second nutshell.
Okay, great. Thank you for giving us that great intro. So tell me a little bit about how did you start about doing this mental health? What motivated you?
Yeah, so Dr. Moby, thank you. That's a great question. I appreciate you having me on here and for creating this platform to talk about this very important subject. In excuse me, 2016, I had a conversation with a gentleman here, Dr. Andy Atwood here. He's an organizational developer. Are you still with me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, super. Yeah, so Dr. Andy Atwood is an organization developer. He worked with the state of Michigan to help the state develop a family program that works best for the communities and those struggling families within the state of Michigan. And he works with organizations to help kind of like look at their DNA and what makes them significant and how do they use their who they are to kind of propel them into a future that's best suited for their industry. And I went and talked to this guy, and I was like, "Hey, here's Joe Reid. Here are all the things that make me me. This struggle with mental illness, this battle I fight on a daily basis. Here are the tools that I use. Here are my giftings." And he's writing all these things down on a whiteboard. And I was just started studying business at Grand Valley State University here in West Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so what do I do with all of these things that make me me? Uh, these unique traits of myself. And he said, Joe, it seems to me that you're waiting for a catalyst to push you in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't tell me categorically what it was that I was going to be doing. He couldn't point me in a specific direction. He's just like, it seems like you're just waiting for something to point you in a direction. Well, I waited 2 years, and on January 25th, 2018, my best friend, who was also the worship pastor at my church, uh, ended up taking his own life.
Oh.
Excuse me, I apologize for my coughing there. So this guy, Nathan, he had been in and out of mental hospitals. He and I had a very similar journey. And, we'd been struggling together. We thought we were doing well. He understood me, I understood him. And he got to the point where he had just bottomed out emotionally. And on January 25th, around 7:00 p.m., I got a call that he had passed away. And, within, while I'm talking to my friend on the phone, learning this information, at the same moment, I was receiving this great, what I call a great calling from God to do something greater with my struggle and my pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at that moment that I knew what I was going to do with those traits that I discussed with Andy Atwood 2 years prior, the things that make me me. Like that was the catalyst that pushed me in the direction of really writing the book, and writing the book led to starting the organization
Mm-hmm.
The organization got started way before the book actually was published, because I just published in June. Um, but the organization is it's helping people. I just got a call 2 days ago about how what we're doing from a wife, what we're doing literally saved somebody's life. And and then the day before that, I got a call. I received a message from a mother who lost her son related to mental illness. And it's just like the work that we're doing, the discussions that you're having on here, Dr. Moby, are so critical. I don't think people realize the power of words. I know I certainly still do not realize it, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, like to get those phone calls, to know that you're having a direct impact on somebody's life. That's all I want, man. That's all I want, is just to impact one person. And that's what I'm trying to do. That was the catalyst. That's what propelled me here. And there's been little things along the way, but losing my best friend, yeah, that really upset me,
Mm-hmm.
and that really got me angry in a lot of
Yeah.
different ways and for a lot of different reasons. And that anger, um, married, and the best way I can describe it is married to love, really pushed me to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is very hard, and you're absolutely right that you could have somebody significant or friend or family. Mental health is very prevalent, whether we acknowledge that it is a biggest pandemic right now, and
Right.
COVID is there too, but this is always there, and people tend to ignore it. And we I had also, I can recall my class fellow, committed suicide. He
Mm.
was so I can also count a few, and then being even in medical profession, still it's very sad, right?
Of course. And the idea of comorbidity,
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of people that struggle with physical ailments, multiple physical symptoms, and to add, that exasperates mental illness, or even creates it more likely for somebody to have a mental illness. It's tragic, especially with a pandemic right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and this is very important that we need to highlight it, because and then common problems, so a lot of, I mean, I have a lot of patients with mental illness, including now with COVID also, and we're going to talk a little bit on that. So first of all, what we can do, about mental health, how can we help, our communities, tell me a little bit, what should we really doing now, because I think still is not coming down, or at least not as forceful it is so far.
Yeah, I think, I just spoke to a police academy here in Grant at the university, and just
Mhm.
talking to recruits who are going to be traveling all over the country, taking on different law enforcement jobs, and that was one of the big things that came up, in that discussion I had with them, is,
Mhm.
what can I do, or what can you do, Dr. Moby? And um, it was interesting. Again, this came up with a conversation I had with I sat down with Miss America, the 1990 Miss America. She asked me this question: so what is your plan? Like, how do we have an impact with such a big
Mhm.
issue? And when all it really boils down to it, and I think, regardless of what your perspective is of somebody like Jesus, for example, it's
Mhm.
always important just to love that one person in front of you. Jesus talked a lot of parables about loving one person, and right now it's me and you, Dr. Moby, and those who are listening, and kind of participating, kind of on the sidelines. But
Mhm.
if I can just be responsible and respectful and loving you right in front of me, then I think if I can be all in and all engaged with you, like specifically with you, Dr. Moby,
Yeah.
then I think the impact is the best that it could possibly be.
Mhm.
We talk about the neuroplasticity in people's brains, and
Yeah.
how the brain can actually change its form based upon, how we think and how we interact with people. And I think it's really important, and it's really encouraging to people to know that mental illness is just a really complicated physical illness, and that
Mhm.
if we start to change the way we address mental illness with like love and sensitivity and real tangible solutions, like how you from what you put into your body to the amount of motion you have to the amount of sunshine you get to how you react to stress and conflict, like all of those things literally shape your brain. It's encouraging to know that we have such the power and ability to do that. And our interaction here, and for those that are listening, your brain is being shaped just by listening to the words we're saying. And
Mhm.
that's encouraging to me. That it's not just some mystical transformation that's happening in a soul that we can't see, but there's actual physical evidence for change that's transpiring throughout our body. And I think it really does boil down to, and I told this to the officers too, is it boils down to love. It boils down to loving and caring and respecting everybody. And if we can do that with the person that we're responsible for the most, which is myself, and the person that I'm talking to right now, which is you, Dr. Moby,
Mhm.
then I think that our impact, we think about trying to reach thousands and millions of people. You can't do that successfully. You can't aim to hit 1 million people and think that you're actually going to do it. But if I can hit one person, if somebody listening within the sound of my voice can be impacted by the fact that they hear that I struggle, they hear that I keep pushing on by doing certain things in my life, then they can maybe be encouraged to maybe share their story and be a little bit more vulnerable, either with their therapist, with their primary care physician, or with somebody else that they know that's struggling in their lives. I think that's really important. It's just focusing on that one person that's right in front of you.
Yeah, yeah, that is so important that that we reach out to whoever we can, and just focus on nearby. Like you're saying,
Yeah,
person next to you or person nearby, and then if we all do that, we can make a difference. And that's the, I think, problem is that we are just limiting to ourselves. So
yeah,
any problems we have, so that's absolutely right. So we should be focusing, like you and me, we should be talking and sharing that information, and whatever help we can offer. I think a lot of things, with technology, everything, we have seen that with social media, the mental health has gone worse, you know,
yeah,
because people think they have 6,000 or 5,000 contacts, but
yeah,
they don't help you. So that is the sad part. So that's where I think the problem is, that there is a lot of we think that everything is going well, but it is not. So that's where I think the problem is with mental health, big time. Because like anything, you can't fake or fool someone that with mental health, in terms of that it is treated. So yes, people can fake in terms of their symptoms, that they might say they're doing well, but they're not. Right.
yeah. And we've really traded in a social media world, quality for quantity, and you can't substitute quality for quantity,
Yeah.
in terms of,
And
one of the big things, there's a couple things that you said that really struck me. I addressed two things that are really helpful for me in my journey, in my personal, I have a very serious mental illness, that I'm even battling with right now as we're talking. I just had a really rough morning, and journaling, or cognitive disclosure, which is sometimes referred to in professional journals, and uh, friendship. I think adults, we have created these unwritten rules around friendship,
mhm.
um, and we're again we're focused so much on quantity and not quality. And what I've discussed in my book is this intentional way of doing friends that really gets down deep into to solidifying a more rooted and foundational friendship that really is key for mental health. And journaling is so important, that cognitive disclosure, because it really does. I mean, there's been studies done by the University of Iowa that talks about like the benefits to professional athletes in terms of cognitive disclosure, and in terms of like how we respond to like HIV treatment. People that journal and use that cognitive disclosure respond way better to, I mean, documented numbers. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but the responding to treatment like HIV has been enormously beneficial, and other things like stress and the side effects of stress and how you deal with treatment is astronomical. So yeah,
Yeah.
big things.
Big thing. So also tell me a little bit about what is happening with COVID. With COVID, of course, we have physical illness as well as huge mental illness. We are seeing a lot more, right?
Yeah.
And so what have you? I'm sure your call volumes and everything has gone way up with that.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a call center. My organization is kind of interesting. We're not a 501c3. We're not an LLC. We're not a business where we're making any money.
Mhm.
We're all online, and we help facilitate organizations like NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is the nation's largest grassroots organization.
Mhm.
And yeah, so our the struggle with people all over the world that interact with our group. I think about people in Toronto, Canada right now, where the editor of my book was in Toronto, Canada, and they're like, the state of lockdown in Toronto, Canada it's insane. It's like it's been locked down for 18 months, tight.
Mhm.
Like there's no going out, there's no restaurants, there's none of that. And I spent some time in Malawi, Africa, where I have a good friend. His name is Samuel Compoundy,
Mhm.
and you think about in cultures like that, how often is mental health discussed? How prevalent is the issue of mental illness? And what I'm finding is that the issue is as prevalent or more prevalent than it is here in the States, but at the same time, it's not as socially acceptable to discuss.
Yeah.
So my friend, who's a pastor there in Blantyre, Malawi, died in a hospital there because they didn't have enough oxygen to keep him alive. It was just a matter of having oxygen, and they didn't have it. And I think about the mental strain that puts on his wife Dorothy, and he was a chief in that part of Africa. At least I don't know much more about other parts of Africa, but the national boundaries were put on by a much larger organization, or the continent of Africa, where they still function in terms of chiefs and tribes. And he was the chief of a big tribe, and the devastation that tribe took, having to find a new chief. Like, I don't understand the concept of that, but I know it's a really big deal to them, because they tell me about it. Because we don't have that here, in Michigan at least. And I just think it's tragic, and I think that what has made it even worse, Dr. Moby, is this politicalization of trauma, of disaster. And when we throw an issue into a political punching match,
Mhm.
um, everybody comes out dead. Nobody wins that battle. But I don't think it needs to be that way. And I think with all of the things that have been happening the last year and a half, whether it be politics related, race related, pandemic related, or mental health related, it's all messy. It's all intertwined. It's all there. And I think the root of it, as simple as I may be making it sound, is pride. I think people, we want to have more quantity than quality of friendships, because we want, for some reason, to think that we're better than what we, or to fill some empty hole in us that we think having a lot of friends is going to do, or to be right based upon some political platform. and to demonize or make somebody that doesn't agree with us look stupid, or for taking a vaccine or not taking a vaccine. It's like this constant wrestling match between what is right and what is wrong. And I think what it boils down to is how are we loving our neighbor if we're constantly trying to prove we're right? And I think that doesn't help my mental health. That doesn't, and especially when it's so advertised over CNN or Fox News or whatever. It's not helping our nation. But then it
Mm.
really does help. It really does help with the ratings, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
It
and
really does
that's
help get the votes, right?
that's true. That's true. So or they get the ratings higher, but unfortunately at the cost of somebody is being
Oh,
dead. Okay, so
yes,
that is sad, very sad.
it
Yeah,
is.
I think that this is so true. Also, you think we can, with all the technology, you think we should be doing better, but we are not. This is again another. We can go to Mars, we can go to Moon, but we can
Yeah,
just reach to ourselves. We can fix ourselves. So that's the hardest part. So
yeah,
that is true. So I think I should say that you are really doing amazing job with all helping so many changing their lives to better, especially with mental health. So I think that's a great work you're doing, and continue that. And you're right, even if you don't have the organization as a setup as, but you're helping your organization, right?
yeah, yeah. Even if you don't have an organization like this, loving that
Mm.
person that's right next to you with fairness and humility is so powerful. You have no idea. Whether it's your children, your spouse, and Dr. Moby too, you having a platform like this where you're using it to discuss a very unpleasant, uneasy topic is powerful as well, and I appreciate that. And this is one example of using technology to benefit humanity, whereas, and most often, I would say technology is not helping us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I want to make sure everybody knows, that having a lot of friends, and and then there is a lot of impact now we are seeing also with teenagers too, and everybody, they are kind of slammed with all the likes and dislikes about their appearances and so forth on social media comments, and that's adding up to a lot of problems with them, because our behaviors are modified or changed based on that, and then that is hurting, not helping. So
Yeah,
we have to be really careful. I think there's gonna be a huge impact in months and years to come with all these changes, because now with COVID we were focused more on media, we're sitting at home and doing. So there will be a big huge impact. And also important thing is about mental health is also connected to your physical health, which means if you are not moving, and if you're not going out and seeking the positive energy from sun, and interacting, that is going to impact big time. So what we eat, how we eat, also impacts both. So everything is interconnected. It's not that one thing is separate. Mental health has a physical well-being attached to it, as well as sleep. So if you don't sleep well and you don't eat right, you don't go out, don't interact, it's going to impact big time. So we are social animals, and we really need that interaction beside just being on the video. So that is true, right?
yeah. And you really touch on something that's really important there. So when you have a mental health crisis, one of the last things you want to do is go outside or move or eat healthy, or like it's the catch 22 of I don't want to do these things, but that should be an indication that that's one of the best things you need to be doing. If you just I have a bracelet right here that says forward is forward. And if you could just take those baby steps and eat that extra carrot and put down that candy bar, or those little things make a huge difference. But I also think one of the keys that's really been neglected, at least in the mental health community, for professionals is communication. The ability to communicate universally. And I addressed this in the first section of my book, where I've created the universal mental health scale. I think between organizations, between mental health organizations, they use a scale that varies all across the board. There's a variety of scales, but I think it really does a disservice to people like myself who have a mental illness, where I'm trying to communicate with professionals, with law enforcement, with my family. If there's not a universal understanding of what a modifier or a number means, then it really makes me hard. It really makes me hard to communicate. It makes it near impossible for me to make somebody else understand what I'm going through. So I've introduced this idea called the Universal Mental Health Scale, and I used the story of a Mars mission that failed because the communication between NASA and the Mars rover was disrupted, because one was communicating using the Imperial system, which was Lockheed Martin, and that made the ship. And NASA was using the metric system. So when you send metric information to a computer that's receiving it empirically, then measurements are all going to be screwed up. And I think that happens when we communicate between patient and doctor. Like, if there's not a universal understanding, and especially with law enforcement and mental health, like law enforcement is constantly reacting to situations where people are dealing with a mental health crisis, constantly. And if there's not an understanding, or like in my case yesterday or this morning, having a crisis and not being able to communicate clearly with my words, if I can just say a specific thing that was very simple and that would communicate a whole myriad of different things, then I think it would make situations for people with major depressive disorder like I have, our lives a lot easier, and the lives for professionals like yourself a lot easier, to have a skill like that, to say, oh, Joe is, for example, I have a crisis number, which is -6. Joe just said he's at a -6, no questions asked. He needs to go to the hospital. He's unsafe. He's having suicidal ideation. He's a hazard to himself or somebody else. Those things just make sense to me. But instead, you go to professionals, mental health professionals, and you get scales that are all over the board and just confuse the heck out of me. So I'm really trying to address that issue nationally, and it's not easy.
Yeah, and that is so true. Well, thank you for coming to our show and giving us a great feedback about mental health and awareness. And any final tips or thoughts you have before then?
Yeah, Dr. Moby, what an honor to be here. What an honor, truly. And I would just want to go back to this really, again, I love to quote Jesus, and he has this really wise statement. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. And this is something that's taught across all religions, really, this principle.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's so powerful about that statement is when you have that statement, it sets a bar for how you love your neighbor. In saying that I can't love my neighbor more than I love myself, as much as I want to try. If I don't love myself very well, if I don't take care of myself very well, if I'm not healing and feeding and exercising, then the capacity for me to care for you, for example, Dr. Moby, is going to be lessened. But the more I care for myself, the more I love myself, then I can go out and I can love others. And I think there's a lot of people, especially in this COVID age, that are not capable or not loving themselves very well. And that's really contributing exponentially to the issues we're having in our society. So love yourself, and then go love your neighbor.
That is true. That is so true. And if we focus on that, that would solve a lot of our problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you once again, and it's an honor to meet you and also learn from you. Take care, sir. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye.